So, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us and for sitting in the front. So, it is with great pleasure that I introduce Maja Smrekar tonight. She's a distinguished lecturer from the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia, from the Academy of Fine Arts and Design. Her work has impacted international art and the science community. Throughout her project, Maja explores realms such as biotechnology, ecology, ethology, artificial intelligence, and soft robotics. Her innovative practice has led to powerful collaborations, resulting in hybrid arts, performances, installations, and site-specific works, and also captivating videos that you can check on her website. Maja's influence extends beyond traditional exhibition spaces, which showcases in prestigious venues such as the RMIT Gallery in Melbourne, Maxi in Rome, the Hyundai Motor Studio in Beijing, among others. So she has received multiple prizes, notably the Prix Art Electronica in 2017. And building on to this success in 2023, she was awarded the Fellow Fluxus, a grant for contemporary artists, a testament on her ongoing impact and commitment to the pushing artistic boundaries. Some of her renowned work is non-brute force and canine topology that you will see later on. Today, we have the privilege of gaining insight of the incredible work of our artist and academic, Maja Smrekar. So please join me in welcoming her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Serena, for your very warm and big words. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's really, really nice and a pleasure to be here. So thank you very much for your invitation. Yeah, so I'm going to have a lecture. I hope that you will enjoy it. I'm going to do it the German way, which means that I show pictures and I mostly read because my way of thinking is so lateral that if I don't do that linear, then we would be here until 3 a.m. Okay, so what am I going to present? I'm going to present you actually the general body of my work. All the projects for the last almost 10 years where I've been using technology and where I've been contextualizing technology and science actually within humanistic terms and vice versa. Actually, I always was interested into bridging gaps and into surpassing binary notions and systems. And I think that all of those could be surpassed. It just depends actually where the point of departure is. So yeah, this is what I'm addressing. Okay, so today's presentation. Yes. So I'll start with an introduction to my libidinal internal force that made me become an interdisciplinary artist. Then I'll present some of my works that interconnect nature, technology, and interspecies communication. I will next address the rise of populism and, as its consequence, the connection with the exploitation of the natural world and the oppression of others. I will conclude with a project that dwells on a reality where humans and non-humans are no longer embedded in a dualist frame, but leveled within the global infrastructure of the commodification of life. So in my artistic practice, I connect personal with the political, and I also stem from the premise that we are all colonized by landscapes. Just as humans colonize houses and cities and surroundings, we also serve as hosts for landscapes and ideologies and technologies and media. This frame of thought derives from my emotional memory map that started composing during the 1980s. It was a decade of growing up as an only child in a Slovenian village located by the Croatian border. My family's occupation was dog breeding, while my parents professionally worked with leather and fur textile crafts produced in our house. The atmosphere was filled with skinned animal smell. This is one of my essential sensorial memories of home. And as my parents usually focused mainly on themselves and on their business, I always had a feeling like the dogs took on the role of my emotional upbringing. Family has therefore always been the presence of dogs for me. We spent hours in solitude among mutually colonizing swampy eastern Slovenian landscapes. These landscapes became another non-human entity that left a deep trace on my mental map. Spending so much time in that natural scenery made me aware already as a child how life is about many of those other than human entities. Here on the photo, you can see my current canine family, my beloved Byron and Ada, my canine friends and family, and also occasionally my artistic collaborators. So this awareness of a mutual colonization of living beings and environments informed my research executed in a collaboration with the Department of Terrestrial and Sweetwater Organisms at the National Institute of Biology in Ljubljana in Slovenia. There, I associated my interests with scientists who were exploring challenges of the sixth big global species extinction, which is mainly happening because of the rapid growth of the invasive species. Our research of this phenomenon was dwelling on the example of biotic diversity degradation in the area of one of the largest thermal water bodies in Europe called Topla. This thermal lake is located in eastern Slovenia, just 10 kilometers from my home village. Before 2010, its surface was completely clear, overgrown with native riparian vegetation, which died out in a record time. Namely, since 2010, the release of a tropical species of water cabbage has established radical changes on the surface of the lake. This plant, which was until then only found in aquarium shops, could easily survive in the lake because of the thermal water which reaches over 30 degrees Celsius. Having no natural predators, the population of the plant had an opportunity to grow exponentially. This resulted in the complete destruction of the original fauna and flora in just 5 years. Whereas such ecosystem changes in the past took at least centuries. Similar ecological disasters are found everywhere on the planet as a consequence of the Anthropocene era. Due to globalization as one of the key reasons for the emerging of this era, many environments have been exposed to conditions that allow an increasingly rapid spread of non-native species of animals, plants, and microorganisms. And these cause dramatically fast changes in the mechanisms of natural selection. So this is a scientist that was trying to get rid of the cabbage, but yeah, you can imagine how this ended. The cabbage ate him. No, but yeah, it was not successful. So consequently, because of this anthropocentric era, behavioral and genetic changes in both non-native and native species often emerge. And these events then trigger systemic crises in various forms, such as appearance of new diseases, lack of crops, deterioration of infrastructure, etc., becoming increasing threat to the humans. Following the procedures of biologists in their rather unsuccessful attempts to remove and therefore regulate the population of aquatic flora in the Topla Lake, I began to think about this devastating local problem in the context of global dimensions. I thought about the possibility of the coming crisis of drinking water that might arise as a universal problem. I designed a mobile survival kit that could become useful as a civil tactical equipment in the event of mass migration due to water shortages. A backpack-like object is intertwined of an autochthonous flax rope with invasive acacia and bamboo. It is basically a rain-catching water collector with impregnated pig bladders in which water flows through many filters into a bamboo tube. Two-tiered wooden pitchfork with a removable wooden net is attached at the top. It could serve as a shade or a fishnet or a pitchfork or a crossbow. The backpack's exterior is, in the spirit of the local folk ornament, adorned with images of some in the Slovene region increasingly invasive species. They're called Japanese knotweed, giant hogweed, zebra mussel, and Asian lady beetle. The word trailer in the project's title is meant as if the project was a trailer for the movie that is soon to be released in reality. And yeah, the first part, I think that we were watching for 2 years during the Corona era, right? Yeah. So as a part of the project, I composed a photo performance, which we are watching now. And it was rendered within a densely populated forest of invasive Japanese knotweed that grows along the banks of Sava River at the edge of Ljubljana town in Slovenia. The photo performance overall shows a possible reality of the future where survival kit for the Anthropocene could sometime soon be practically used. During my collaboration with the scientists, I learned that what they call ecology is a branch of biology which studies the interactions among organisms and their environments. In parallel, I realized how many criticisms of environmental destruction in the media and by politicians often rely on another kind of ecology, the one that is connected with conventional ideas about the unspoiled nature. This narrative, however, usually serves the eco-capitalist concern on sustainable management in order to strengthen corporations. And as a consequential phenomenon, we come to a plurality of public opinions about ecology, often opposing one another. This situation made me think about how the society's confrontation with the cultural or with the natural other as something foreign is much often being mystified because it demands an effort to be understood. I decided to address this subject through investigation of the coevolution between a human as a cultural other and a dog as a domesticated natural other. I started composing a series of works titled Canine Topology. I photographically performed an emblematic representation of a visual introduction into the series in collaboration with a wolf dog. This approach later became a part of my artistic method. It includes composing a visual communication at the beginning of each project, which introduces the general atmosphere and at the same time establishes some kind of an intuitive mapping of my temporary artistic focus. During the research on parallel evolution between wolves and humans, I discovered that several genes have been evolving in parallel as adaptation to their similar environments. Importantly, modern dogs have developed the ability to digest carbohydrates and starch in a way not shared by the wolf. Since that time, humans have developed a lack in smell perception. This decreased with the development of our culture that selected for behavioral skills in verbal, sound, and visual communication. At the same time, smell remained central in the dog's perception of the world. Furthermore, a gene called SLC6A4 consequently mutated in humans. It codes for the regulation of serotonin transporter, and polymorphisms on this gene are one of the key molecular mechanisms for humans to be able to better tolerate the presence of others. Which actually means that it was not just that humans domesticated dogs, but that actually also dogs domesticated humans. So it was a mutual domestication, which I find super beautiful. So the first project in the canine topology series was titled Ecce Canis, and it was embodying this research of the parallel evolution between the two species in a form of an interactive installation. It was displaying a liquid chromatography separation machine used in analytical chemistry to separate, identify, and quantify components in a specific mixture. These contained some serotonin and have been isolated out of blood samples from me and from my dog companion, Byron. After collecting serotonin fractions through the columns, we transformed these into the odor. As a juxtaposition to the laboratory, there was an immersed living environment. A spherical cave suggested a paraphrase of living in caves at the beginning of the wolf-human relationship. The installation environment was covered in recycled wolf fur, where visitors were able to dwell and smell the odor released by the sensor-equipped respirator. So yeah, the wolf fur was bought in different kind of second-hand shops. So it's all from the 70s and 80s, just for the record. So the next project was executed in a form of a performance as an outcome of a residency at Jacana Wildlife Studios in France. This is a facility that keeps animals employed as actors. I was collaborating with one wolf, 2 Czechoslovak wolf dogs, and 3 animal ethologists, humans. To prepare for the performance, I had to follow a strict process. I was first introduced to the animals in a cage by only walking through their territory without looking at them or interacting with them in any way. It was crucial to be relaxed. After about half an hour of bumping into my body and then running away, the female alpha wolf dog grabbed my hand with her muzzle and took me to the center of the pack. That way, she showed me that I was allowed to get down to their eye level. I was not allowed to ever look the alpha male into his eyes, though. At the same time, I needed to make the smaller wolf feel safe. In this way, both the two highest ranked wolf dogs and the lowest ranked wolf fully accepted me. That is how I was able to enter into their pack dynamics. That way, our insecurity decreased, which was crucial for the performance because the animals did not feel the need to run away from me anymore. Oh, sorry. Yeah. During the performance, I lied on the floor with fat and starch coating my skin, which the wolves licked off my body. That fat and starch was actually a paraphrase of the common and parallel diet that the two species had together. And this was also one of the parameter why the genes in humans, but also then in wolves, why they mutated in parallel. So that is why it was important for me that the food that they eat off my body is actually the mixture of the food based on which our mutual coevolution happened. So, but it was the bond that we formed in our communication process during the residency that kept me relaxed and that kept them staying with me throughout the whole performance, more so than the food. So then during the performance, there were 3 texts that were read by the voice of stage. There were extracts from Joseph Boyce's performance, I Like America and America Likes Me, from 1974. Do you know about this performance? Do you know Joseph Beuys? A very, very known German contemporary artist. You don't? Okay, so just very shortly. His performance, I Like America and America Likes Me, happened like this. He was invited to this private gallery in 1974 to have to do a project there. So since it was his first time in America, and since he was very critical towards the American politics, he decided that he is going to visit America and that he is going to visit this gallery, but that he will never step foot on the American soil, and that he is just going to communicate with the native inhabitants of America. And that is why it happened like this. So he came to, he flew to JFK, and he had the gallery to rent a vehicle, a medical vehicle. How is that called? The ambulance. Yeah, thank you. So the ambulance actually came to pick him up on the JFK airport, so that he would not step on the floor. But it was also like they had to put him on the wheels, so he really didn't want to step on the floor. So on the wheels, into the ambulance, on the wheels, into the gallery, where he spent, I think, 7 days, something like that, a week, just in the gallery, and where he met with the wild coyote, live wild coyote. So the whole performance was actually going on like this, that on a daily basis, the visitors could come to the gallery and they could watch him trying to communicate with this wild coyote, which was, of course, very much afraid of him. But also Joseph Beuys was afraid of the coyote because the animal could attack him. But eventually, over a few days, they managed to somehow communicate with each other, and they accepted each other's presence, and the performance was finished when they managed to lie relaxed together within about, I don't know, a meter from each other in the corner of a gallery. And then the same protocol to get him back to JFK Airport. So he never stood on the floor of America. So then, so he was writing a lot of texts during this performance, and I decided to extract a few quotes also for my performance, because I wanted to me it was important that for my performance, which I did almost 40 years later, that I would contextualize my work with the work, a similar work that was done in a completely different context in the 70s. So this was the first contextualization. The other one was Oleg Kulik's performance, which he did in 1997, and it's called I Bite America and America Bites Me. So he did this performance then 13 years later, right? So Oleg Kulik is an actionist. That means that he's a very, very radical performative. Actionism is very, very radical political performance. It usually, in actionism, usually the body is the main medium with which a performer works. So Oleg Kulik in 1997, so this was 6 years after the Soviet Union fell apart, and it was 6 years after, or maybe 7 years after the Cold War. But you have to imagine, okay, I mean, situation is very complicated, to say the least, already at this point, also with Russia, but from the 50s to the end of the 80s, it was also very complicated. And the majority of the Eastern European countries were living in total seclusion to the West. And the West was therefore, I mean, it was actually the East was totally communistic and was seeing the West as the other, as something that is totally, the capitalism of the West was totally bad. And the West had the same focus and the same fear and phobia towards the East and the communism as something completely bad. So in 1991, the Berlin Wall, which was dividing the East and the West, fell down, and symbolically, not just symbolically, also for real, you know, these two, the East and the West, could finally be able to look in each other's eyes, right? And to confront this fear and all the phobias that they mutually were having towards each other. So what Oleg Kulik wanted to do in America, therefore, because America was during the Cold War very, very phobic towards communism, which was already, of course, coming from Russia. So he wanted to show the mainstream American culture. He wanted to show them how it is that they probably see Russians. So what he did actually was the over-identification. This is what Slavoj Žižek, the Slovenian philosopher, called over-identification. And I think that maybe the best popular reference for that would be Sacha Baron Cohen and his Borat character. You know, this is over identification. He shows how the majority of the West usually sees the Arabs or other Eastern countries, and it's totally not the truth, of course. So Oleg Kulik did the same in 1997 in I Bite America and America Bites Me. So he came to JFK airport. He took off his clothes and went on all fours and started to behave like a dog. And then, like a dog, he went into, of course, he had assistants. He went on the back seat, in the back seat of the taxi. And, you know, he was brought like a dog to the gallery. And in the gallery, there was already this kennel waiting for him, where he spent a week like a dog. And the visitors could actually come see him. And so he was there eating, peeing, sleeping, everything in the kennel. Because he wanted to show himself as the Russian who, you know, how during the Cold War, his nation was usually perceived. Okay, so, and then it was me in 2014. So now I'm a woman. I was not invited to America, but still, you know, I'm doing the performance which is connected with canines, with wolves, where there's an absolute what's the word? An absolute reference and absolute association for the professional public to these two performances. So that is why I decided to, of course, my the topic that I was addressing through my performance was the ecofeministic topic, right? And my body, which was shown here as the other, was the body of a female, and it was not connected with the native bodies or the bodies of different nations. However, since it was an ecofeministic statement, and since it was since I was making a statement with my naked body and in collaboration with the wolves, I was therefore standing there in the name of all the others that also my previous colleagues actually addressed. So to go on. So the texts of Oleg Kulik and Joseph Beuys were juxtaposed to mine as a historical contextualization of addressing collaboration with canines in art. So while the first artist used the animal as a symbol in his performance, the second one used an animal for metaphor. Whereas in my work, I presented myself through a passive body turned into a landscape. The wolf dogs joined me on a stage only in the moment when my text started to be read. They ate from the surface of my body and left their traces on its topography. So the reason for such dramaturgy was to shift the perspective from humans to animals. And this was the ecofeministic statement, because I understand animals and humans as members of the same political species, meaning that we are all resisting together in our fights for survival on a damaged planet, increasingly filled with capitalist ruins. So I was very overwhelmed with the strong bond established with the wolf family, led by the female wolf mother. And I therefore started dealing with my own maternal instincts. I realized that motherhood should not be reduced to parenthood, but should be abundant to interpersonal relationship on a large scale. It should become a concept of solidarity in co-creating our responsible futures among humans and non-humans. And it became clear to me that in order to achieve this distributed agency on a micro-political level, I needed to come up with a micro-performative method on a molecular level. So I went beyond the laws of genus or species or race or gender and decided to breastfeed a dog. So I created a project that was titled Hybrid Family. It followed a process of preparation from October until the beginning of February 2016, from October 2015. The 112 days of seclusion preparing for the performance took place at the residency in the Freies Museum, Berlin. The process included psychoendocrinological training, which was composed of a diet of iron-rich food and hydration of galactagogue liquids, such as, for example, fenugreek and fennel tea. They all promote lactation. Alongside, I prepared physiologically by using mechanical breast pumping at 8 times per day, every 3 hours for 20 minutes. The breast pumping act carried the impulses to neuroendocrine cells of my hypothalamus through the nerve receptors in my breasts. Consequently, oxytocin hormone, that as a side effect causes empathy, was released to be transported by blood to mammary glands. This process was releasing another hormone, prolactin, which stimulated milk production. So I thereby executed the same strategies as some mothers-to-be, no matter regarding their gender, who are about to adopt a still nursing baby. So colostrum started to occur after 8 weeks, right when I adopted a puppy, whom I called Ada. And then I invited a photographer, a performative photographer, Manuel Vasson, who came to visit and lived with us for a week. And he took a number of photographs that depicted glimpses of our hybrid family dynamic. The public presentation took place a week later in the form of 3 people at the time visits in my studio. It was transformed into a hybrid nursery where visitors could witness the 20-minute breast pumping act and then the feeding of a puppy with colostrum. They were in the meanwhile drinking fennel herb tea and discussing with me the reproductive freedom in a heteronormative society and anthropocentrism as one of its consequences. I was by these conversations and the whole profound experience further drawn to think within the discourse of an American philosopher, Donna Haraway. She poses the following question, quote, "What is feminist reproductive freedom in a dangerously troubled multi-species world?" Unquote. My conclusion was the following. The microperformativity of the 2 hormones produced by breast pumping and later by breastfeeding that were increasingly expressing as a feeling of empathy became the ultimate point of departure for hybrid family. The one that brought me to think within the ecofeminist terms. I consequently thought of a way to symbolically place the cell materials of a wolf, a dog, and a human back into an equal cohabitating relationship. because ever since the beginning of our existence, all three carnivorous species have been regulating the environment together. However, the wolf is now an endangered species, while humans and dogs became the largest invasive species on the planet. So I again made a photo, this time of dissolving portraits of Ada and me, which was a visual derivative announcing the next project that I titled Artemis. The start of the project included consuming beta blockers in order to produce bigger amounts of progesterone and estrogen to gain follicles. Then I went to a private IVF clinic in Czech Republic because I could not do it in Slovenia. We don't have any IVF clinics that are private. And yeah, that was the only way how I could extract my follicles. So the nearest place where I could do that was Czech Republic. So there, an egg retrieval procedure was executed and the materials were sent back to Slovenia. And then in Slovenia, around that time, Ada was old enough for her sterilization procedure. And I asked the veterinarian to take a small piece of her fat tissue while she was still under narcosis. After all materials were collected, I started the next phase in Biotechna, a laboratory for artistic research of living systems. It's a fab lab in Ljubljana. There, within the regulated biotechnological protocols, a team of biotechnologists and I enucleated my extracted reproductive cell. We left it under a UVC light and then by electroporation fused Ada's fat cell with the leftover membrane of my reproductive cell. The hybrid cell was then, so actually, it's actually cloning, right? Yeah, so the reproductive cell, whichever reproductive cell is, even if the if you enucleate it, it means that you take out the core, but its membrane is still made like this, that it just works like this, that whatever else you put in the reproductive cell instead of the core, and if that is then a somatic bodily fat cell, the reproductive cell just works like this, that programs whatever is there, it programs that cell then divides. So this is what then happened here. And yeah. So we left it that it was dividing for 3 days. That is just a little bit before the formation of a blastocyst. And then we froze it to minus 198 degrees Celsius. With the nutrition and hormone feeding stopped, and therefore it stayed frozen in time. It got defrosted and publicly displayed and visible under the microscope on a few occasions. But the hybrid cell was, however, not rendered for its biotechnological potentials so much. Its existence became the statement which of it was actually a statement which I like to call it's the molecular art. So then, after finishing the Canine Topology series, I was invited to exhibit all 4 projects at once in the same space. Instead of displaying a retrospective, I decided that I wanted to compose a fresh perspective on the whole processuality and the storyline of the intertwining narratives that evolved throughout all the processes. I therefore designed an installation that was envisioned as a precise reconstruction of the series in a form of an archive. I titled this project Xenomorpha. It was inspired from the term that derives from the classification name for a member of the obsolete taxonomic subgroup, xenomorphs, the dog-like apes. Each project in Xenomorpha became a cluster of referential projects, and each of those objects became a character interconnected with other characters. And I made a referential case between the installation's visuals and its core structure, which is referencing a hybrid derivative of a dog stacker. Dog stacker is a training tool designed for dog breeders or handlers as an aid for correctly stacking their show prospect puppies and young adult dogs. Canine topology was thereby shown as some kind of a mise-en-scène of the series, formally supported by the ultimate tool for a dog show competition. With that, I wanted to underline the analogy with the similar competitiveness and institutionalized pressures that artists often get to be submitted to within the art world. So the Eccecanis is displayed in Xenomorpha by a liquid chromatography separation machine accompanied by the 2 tubes with platelets-rich plasma derived out of my and Byron's blood samples. An accompanying plug-and-play machine together with a miniaturized cave releasing the Eccecanis odor complements the jewelry box to round up a summary of all the Eccecanis signifiers. Something resembling a jewelry box-like object is depicted in a form of carved brass, copper, and silver remake of a SLC 6A4 gene. So to remind you, this gene mutated as a consequence of the parallel evolution with dogs. And resulted as a serotonin release regulation within the human body. So this box also connects the first and the second project into a whole because it can be dragged back and forth through a part of the performance documentation track as a symbolic overlap of the emotional bond established between me and the performing wolves on one hand, and on the other one, it symbolizes the human cultivation of nature that has been happening for a very long time with the dog as our partner in crime. My solution for the I hunt nature and culture hunts me was following an archaeological concept of my personal historiography that aligned with the content of the written text. 54 printed still video frames were extracted from the performance video documentation. The text was read, that was read during the performance was handwritten by me directly on the photographs. Then the photos were covered by a thin layer of starch and cast in wax so as to bring forth the paraphrase of my fat and starch-coated body during the performance that the wolves ate. The hybrid family process is represented with another jewelry-like box. It has been displayed as an object that includes a juxtaposition of breast pumps displayed as guns, thus as a weapon that enables me to resist the neoliberal misogynist system that rules the whole Umwelt as we know it, down to our every last subatomic particle. That particle was shown as a 3D print of a prolactin molecule put next to the pumps and next to the handmade embroidery that claims my otherness established by my hybrid motherness. Since Artemis has been completely created inside the laboratory, its artwork, the hybrid cell, needed a suitable way of stepping out of the lab into an exhibition space. Thus, I designed an environment that would be able to support the cell to survive. Together with my collaborators, we composed an incubator integrated into an installation with an implemented microscope for the audience to be able to observe the cell displayed at the exhibition. I also put a huge lens at the final part of a dog stacker, which served as a synonymous with scientific research. But instead of rendering everything more precise in order to adjust the view with all its dominance and interest, the lens transformed the whole installation into a hallucinatory imagery of a parallel time where perception of reality became a reality. In 2018, the dog-human paradigm transformed into the next artwork titled Opus et Domus, which means work and home in Latin. The project stemmed out of a feedback to populist politicians triggered reactions that accelerated in the global social media and yellow press based on biased misinterpretations of the canine topology artworks. I therefore decided to include my hybrid family in the Opus et Domus by producing yarn from Byron's, Ada's, and my own body hair. That yarn became a social fabric that was defined by our hybrid relationship. Throughout this durational performance, I was engaged into the production of threads on a heavy metal spinning wheel placed within a glass house. The service gesture of turning the spinning wheel involving my entire body was displayed as an objectivization of female body as a means of production. I specifically wanted to underline such position as increasingly apparent in times of populism. Within the latter, the significance of the nation increases, placing great value on female productivity and birth rate. Through such social regression, the female body has been again seen as property of the state, law, and ideology. And this is why I reverted to this obsolete form of production in the performance. Serving to underline the contrast to the symptom, I attached the advanced technology to the exterior front wall of the glass house. While the spinning wheel was operating the lever for microfluidic laboratory equipment from the inside, the fluids containing Byron's and my serotonin were slowly traveling through the tubes on the outside. There, the drops were evaporating on a hot plate, one by one, throughout the whole performance. The archetypal relationship depicted in this tableau vivant thus paraphrased Franz de Waal's conclusion that the roots of politics are older than humanity. This thought suggests that nowadays hybrid processes in society are solely political statements. In 2019, I was commissioned to compose an artwork that should include artificial intelligence. During the research phase, I was dwelling into the work of a philosopher, Oksana Timofeeva. In her book, which I highly recommend, it's called History of Animals, a Philosophy, she claims that, quote, humans try to overcome the abyss between nature and culture which opened with the end of the classical human figure in the 20th century through the use of technology, which has been, I would add, manifested especially across the field of artificial intelligence. I composed this photo performance where I wanted to depict this ambiguity that at the first glance seems like a fight between technology depicted as the robotic arm and nature depicted as an animal. But maybe it could be also understood as a potentiality of play between the two protagonists. Based on this insight, I wanted to create an artwork that would possibly allow me to disperse the concept of machine learning's hierarchical relations and structures of power through human and non-human corporeality. This is how I composed a project called Non-Brute Force, an ongoing research platform interrogating forms of data governance instituted through structured models of reality and AI. The project stems from the premise that humans and non-humans are all members of the same data species, leveled in the world of the global infrastructure grid of the market economy and the techno-capitalist commodification of life. A central setup of the project was an installation that took the form of a dystopian microcosm structured around a three-dimensional grid designed to resemble an abstracted serotonin molecule. Since serotonin regulates dogs' and humans' metabolic functions that highly influence our heart rate and breathing, these were measured as physiological data captured and classified by AI in the performance that was held on an installation grid. Before each performance took place, the AI generated a map for me while I started climbing the grid to push and rearrange tiles for the dog to follow. The captured data of our bodies served as input for the algorithm to learn how to advise me to invest just enough bodily force to align my heartbeat with the dog's. All the performance data got stored in the Apple cloud with access to it restricted. While the data from the dog's body, also gathered at the Apple cloud, presented a continuous disruption of the corporate human health statistics, challenging its prescriptive power. The same data was gathered within the non-brute force cloud in parallel with the performativity of all agents to be openly observable by the public through a QR code approachable interactive software. So this is the QR code, which allows you to connect to the project's interface. So here you can see the revealed whole bodily vital signs, invisibility of me and the dog, which was happening during the performance. Just that now you will see that there's the whole data archive and everything is there. Just the heart rate is not being measured, of course, because we're not doing the performance. So this data, but most importantly, this data played two roles in the project because Apple Health was not allowing us to run our biometrics data calculation and feed the AI in our app. We established an artistic intervention in digital public sphere by building our own cloud where data gathered at the same time. That, among all other informations, also enabled the public to openly observe all the steps AI took in order to generate a new map for each of my next performances. So then the next step was to challenge that I wanted to challenge this objective affirmation of the AI. And I felt the need to pose a question on whether forms of ontological and epistemological liberation from models of hierarchical relations could be articulated in ways that might exceed the termination that the AI is usually, the AI architecture is usually offering us. So I consequently needed to approach technology that would allow me to embody all the gathered data in order to possibly achieve some kind of an embedded agency. And then along with the then co-curator of the project, Jonas Jørgensen, who is an artist and a professor at the biorobotics department of the University of Southern Denmark, we designed a series of so-called bodies without organs in the form of soft robotic morphologies. After every performance iteration of feeding and training the algorithm, after every performance finished, the non-brute force installation grid now transformed into a landscape of inflating and deflating soft robots that were choreographed by an evolutionary algorithm. The latter was set up to process continuously updated human dog performance data from the cloud in order to transform the robots into the living measure of our data embodiment. This whole dystopian setup therefore aimed to extend the question on whether we are in danger of losing control to AI or to machines, onto the question about losing control to models of reality itself. And even though the map that the AI offered me in the performance was not the territory, the non-brute force project addresses how the whole world has been extending into a vast landscape of the algorithmic and data-driven unknown, acquiring some kind of a new paradigm of thought. I believe this new paradigm of thought requires us to think beyond humanist limitations in order to embrace the risks that becoming other than human will bring in the future. Thank you very much. Oh.
Perfect. Thank you so much for walking through fantastic projects and also very interesting how you question us. I see that they create some ideas here. We have time maybe just for one short questions. One, do someone have a question? Did he write some questions, some ideas?
Okay.
I see there's a lot of questions happening here. No? Okay, I have one question. Was very interesting to see how you embody the research that you're doing, trying to understand what it means to think outside of the human, like the anthropologist point of view, with the relation with the animals, and then how you work also through the technology. No, I don't know if you know, but here we have a lot of people experimenting with technology and trying to understand, okay, how we will live in these futures, no? And finally, it's a very big insight you give us by living it like full inside this performance that you have and trying to understand, okay, what this drives me? Is it a dystopia, or do you see also sometime an utopia or possibility of a better in it, no? Because here I think we are tends to try to be optimistic about it, not necessarily being very far from your project. But I'm wondering how you see a possible positive in this interspecies mixed with AI and I don't know, this weird future we are going in.
How I see,
Oh, you're actually microphone.
yeah. So the question was how I see.
Do you see dystopia? Or do you see a possible utopia out of this?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think that it's the same approach as hopefully in all of my projects. It's neither of the both and both of them at the same time. It's somewhere in between or beyond. I don't know actually. Well, in this project, perhaps the whole setup and the majority of the project is set up as really as an illustration of a dystopian world that we live in. I really do feel that we live in such a square Cartesian world, and that we are entities and organic bodies, and the world is really completely square, and we are totally, it's really, yeah, it is very dystopian what I did here. And what I wanted to say actually was that, but only here, it's not that I feel like this all the time, but sometimes I do feel like I live in the world which is totally life unfriendly. And it's not so much about, me personally, but there is just so much money and so much resources in the world. But on the other hand, there is so many people and other living beings being hungry and being in war and suffering unbelievably. So this was one of the reasons why I decided to do this Cartesian. And I think that the humanistic thought at its core, starting more than 2000 years ago, has also plays a part in this dystopian reality that we live now. This is one thing, but on the other hand, I mean, there is a utopian hope at the end of the project. It ends, it's a happy end. There are these entities with our digital identities, and they are trying to, reach beyond the Cartesian grid. I don't know where, I don't know how, but I do believe they, at the end, that they thrive and are able to actually go beyond. So it's a happy ending of the performance.
Yeah, so your work is quite, yeah, wild, like makes me think. Like, I had a discussion with my class about your work, and some people were really like saying, you cannot do that, you cannot feed a dog with your own milk. And I'm like, why not? Like who decides? And
But can you drink milk from?
yeah, exactly. So I was like, who are we to say that something is wrong or right? And I think that's really cool about your artwork, because what's nature, what's nurture, what's good, what's bad. But how do you decide what is like a boundary for your work? Like when do you think like, oh, I cannot do this, or
When I don't get production money. Well, but it's true. It really is. It's not so easy. Excuse me? Exactly. Then there's definitely a limit there. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I know yeah, the times are like this. I think that if I did these projects 20 years ago, in the 90s, I think that they would seem less radical than now. It's a bit sad that the 21st century, I see it like this. The technology is exponentially, it's totally growing almost on a daily, on a weekly basis. But on the other hand, it's as if that the society, the more that technology is actually progressing, the society is digressing, is sliding into digression, right? And also, I mean, the majority, a big part of society. I think that these two discrepancies are, of course, connected because such progression that has been going on for the, I don't know, for the last decades, it's, I mean, evolutionary, from the evolutionary perspective, we totally cannot, like physically, we really cannot go in the same pace with that. And on the other hand, I can understand the fear of the unknown. And this is why something that is known and that is traditional and that is old is, of course, probably a bit more comforting. And I think that a lot of people is more and more people are probably actually dwelling into this kind of comfort, and that is why I think that my work seems so wild and crazy. But I don't know. I think it is important to put across the messages of the body, not just the female body. I know that like I'm stressing that a lot, but it's not just about, it's about all bodies. And I think that it's important to put across the main question, which is, are we the owners or just the inhabitants of our own bodies? And of course, it's the latter, right? But I think that we should be very, very critical towards the system, which is not actually letting us to be the owners of our own bodies. And this is why I am doing all this with my body, to try to spark this kind of thinking, not to shock. But of course, I know that I also shock, but, I think that, in this day and age, there's, in the day and age of cancel culture, I'm shocked myself that I still shock someone, if I do.
Well, thank you very much for provoking us a lot of thought and pushing a bit the boundaries, and hopefully inspire us as well to push some boundaries and discover our own boundaries that hopefully our body will tell us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very, very much for your focus. You were great.